Howdy, guys, and welcome to night 47 of Big Brother season 23. And welcome to Cliff Notes from outside the Big Brother house. All right, Sunday night, we didn't have a whole lot of conversation going on last night because everyone's sitting here waiting for the veto ceremony that's going to take place today, the repercussions of that. Then we'll get a little bit more conversation. We had a little bit last night we'll talk about, but a little more quiet, a little less gameplay than is typical. So just as a bit of a refresher, we right now have Xavier and Claire on the block, but Xavier won veto. He's going to pull himself off today, and almost certainly, you can just almost call it 100%. Derek X is going to go up in Xavier's place. Derek X is going to be the backdoor plan this week, and he's going to have to do some heck of some campaigning to survive this week. I do believe Derek X is a target, and I think he's probably going home this week. So that's what's going on. So again, with that in mind, a little bit more just playing, having fun last night. They got the backyard back, so the house guests have been enjoying the backyard, and we'll talk about all the conversations that took place. So let's go ahead and start with, I don't know, early evening. We've got Derek X and Sarah Beth in the HOH room. Derek X is trying. He's trying to make some pitches before the veto ceremony is held, try to keep himself off the block. He's saying, look, Sarah Beth, I've had a long relationship with Kylan, long being 47 days, but he said, I've had a long relationship with Kylan, and if you don't take the shot at me right now, if you don't put me up on the block like I'm afraid you may be planning, if you don't do that, I will have so much trust in you. And she said, well, yeah, I can see how you would, sure, but he's not convincing her. Sarah Beth is also saying, look, I don't want Claire going home, and I think she realizes that in order to protect Claire, she needs the strongest target possible, which is Derek X. So even though theoretically she still has the option not to put him on the block, if she truly wants to protect Claire, Derek X is probably the only choice that she has left that would save Claire for going home this week. So the writing is already on the wall. So she's saying, look, I don't want Claire to go home. Eventually she tells Derek X, says, look, I'm sorry. He says, I don't really feel like you're not really sounding like you're really 50-50 at this point, implying that she's already made up her mind. And she says, I know. And she says, but I'm sorry. But at this point, I just can't trust anyone except for Kylan. And I have a feeling that if I hadn't won the HOH this week, I'd be up on the block. So she's basically saying, you would have come after me, Derek X, if I hadn't won HOH. And that's probably true. And so you can't tell. Here's the thing. Some of you may know this. You're not allowed to tell within Big Brother definitively if someone's going up on the block, if they're being replaced. Yeah, we have to keep a little mystery in place. So she can't tell him that, but it's not a big secret. She's making it pretty clear without actually saying it. He probably is going to be the choice tomorrow. So with that said, she says, I'll consider your arguments. Thank you. They hug, and that's the end of it. But Derek X's pitch is very ineffective with Sarah Beth. After that, we have a little bit of just fun going on in the house. The house guests are ranking the evicted house guests based on who they like the most, who they would most hate to be tied to for 24 hours. And then they move on to who they'd want to take to a haunted house. Just a lot of fun little conversations trying to take up some time in the house itself. But eventually we get girls' night out. Plans are in place for a girls' night out, which ends up starting around 10:30 or so. Sarah Beth has some wine from her HOH basket. So they're all drinking wine from their basket. And while they're upstairs kind of playing around and everything, Derek X and Xavier are downstairs having an egg throwing, egg catching, egg dropping contest. A couple of eggs get broken, which if I was in a house would irritate me. A little inside scoop. There's some things, if you run out of food like milk, oftentimes you could convince Big Brother to give you an extra gallon or so. But eggs, nah. Once you run out of eggs for the week, that's it. There were times when I was really wanting a fried egg for breakfast, and they were all gone by Wednesday or so, so you just had to wait a day or two. So if someone's breaking a few eggs, would not have made me happy at all. But anyway, so Derek X and Xavier are downstairs playing the egg toss while the girls are upstairs with their girls' night out. Now, Sarah Beth at one point wonders, she says it jokingly, but she says, yeah, the guys, I wonder if they're downstairs thinking that we're forming a girls' alliance up here because we're all hanging out together right now. And that probably would be the case if it wasn't for the Cookout Alliance. I could see just such a girls' alliance forming from an event such as this. But what's funny is about the same time that Sarah Beth is upstairs saying this, Xavier is downstairs saying, look, guys, here's a girls' alliance that's forming right before our eyes upstairs. So with that being said from both sides, I just continue to preach and feel like the undercurrent is a bit of a gender break, and that we're going to see that happen as we get to the end game of this game. I truly believe it. And one more thing happens this evening that we'll talk about as well that makes me feel even more about that. And that's this. Xavier and Kylan are talking with each other. Xavier's saying, look, I'm afraid Big D would win if he gets to final two against either one of us. Excuse me. He says, I think Big D would win against either one of us. So really, we need to take each other to a final two so that we have a chance to win this thing. Well, isn't that interesting? So basically, at least Kylan and Xavier are talking as though their plans for final three are the two of them and Big D. So the three men within the final six, the Cookout Alliance, are theoretically watching out for each other. We know that Big D has always been worried about the women, so he certainly would be on board with the final three of himself and the other two guys. And I think the women are aware of that as well. I'm telling you, at some point, we're going to see some fireworks between those two groups. All right, the guys have discovered alcohol in the storage room. And it's kind of interesting. They have girls' nights out where they drink a little wine. Now the guys have discovered alcohol in the storage room. So they hide it, and then they lead the girls on a scavenger hunt where they have to go different rooms, answer riddles to eventually find the alcohol. Everyone's participating. All the women are participating except for Tiffany, who says, now I've got to fold clothes. Well, you've got more hours in the day than you know what to do with typically. And you got to participate in stuff like this. I understand Tiffany being older than most of the other people in the house. It's easy to kind of want to step away sometimes, but when people are doing things like this, you need to stay involved as much as possible and participate as well. But Tiffany didn't tonight. She's folding clothes instead, while everyone else is running around looking for and eventually finding the alcohol, which makes them all extremely happy. Tiffany eventually is talking to the cameras. She's saying, look, if Sarah Beth sends Derek, she says Sarah Beth may be sweet and all that, but if Sarah Beth sends Derek X out of the house, I'm going to make sure Sarah Beth is next. Sarah Beth is going out of this house as well. It's interesting. Tiffany really wants to hold on to Derek X as much as possible. But she also says, look, again to the cameras, she's saying that she tried to convince Derek X to push for getting Hannah nominated instead of himself, which would then mean, because of the Cookout Alliance and such, that would have meant that Claire would have gone home and Derek X would have survived. So that was her way to protect Derek X, but she doesn't think that Sarah Beth will go for it. And so basically she's going to have to say goodbye to Derek X. Yeah, it's interesting. As much time as Tiffany spends with Claire, and yet she's still ready to cut Claire loose if it means saving Derek X. And I got to say, from a gameplay standpoint, well done, Tiffany. She's trying to keep the emotion out of the game. I think she's doing what she thinks needs to be done in order to get her to the end, even if it means cutting someone loose that she feels a tight connection with. Now, we have heard Tiffany say before, and I've talked about it here before as well, that she's worried that Claire knows too much about Tiffany's game and therefore could blow up her game if she doesn't get Claire out before too long. Tiffany, she's brutal when she needs to be, right? All right, we've got Alyssa talking to Xavier. Alyssa is as strategic as Tiffany's playing the game sometimes, as emotionalist as she plays it when she needs to. On the other hand, we've got Alyssa and or Derek X and Claire talking. Let's talk about that. Well, let's talk about some different emotions. We've got Alyssa talking to Xavier, and she's saying she is so excited she isn't going to be able to keep the smile off of her face during the veto meeting when Derek X realizes that he's being backdoored by Sarah Beth. She's saying she is so excited by the joy that she knows she's going to feel and how stupid Derek X is going to feel when he realizes he's getting backdoored. She's really going to thrive in the emotions that are going on at this veto meeting. And with more emotions, Derek X and Claire are talking, and Derek X is saying, look, Sarah Beth is not getting my vote. If I go home, Sarah Beth is not getting my jury vote. Well, don't worry, Derek X. I really think that Sarah Beth's going to be joining you next week. Y'all aren't going to be apart from each other that long. You probably aren't going to have to worry about whether or not you're casting a vote for Sarah Beth. But he's saying, yes, Sarah Beth's not getting my vote. Now later he comes back and says, yeah, I don't know. I almost feel like I'd have to give her my vote if she plays that strong a game. But he mentions that. And then Claire at one point says, look, you don't have to give a vote to the person who voted you out in order not to be a bitter juror. That's true. But sometimes if you choose not to give that vote, it's because you are a bitter juror as well. We already had Brittany, who had already said that Kyland is not getting her vote, which means we've got the first two jurors in the House both kind of saying, yeah, the person who voted me out, they ain't getting my vote. There's not a chance in the world. Is this going to be a season of bitter jurors in the jury house? I don't know. I could easily see it. There's going to be a lot of emotions, especially as information starts coming out. Every time a juror gets into that jury house, I wouldn't know. I was never in the jury house, but every time a juror gets in the jury house, they start sharing more information with who's already there. People start realizing more things that they weren't aware of. More and more, they start thinking they've been had. And before you know it, you got some upset people in jury. All right, we've got Sarah Beth talking to Kyland. She's talking about her meeting that she had earlier with Derek X. And she basically says what we already knew watching live feeds. His arguments just weren't strong enough. It really hadn't changed her mind. But she's also upset that he wouldn't throw anyone's name under the bus. And she's saying he's useless to me if he's not going to throw out names. And she's wondering why this season's cast is so resistant to throwing out names when asked. Well, it's because most of the cast, Sarah Beth, realizes that information is power, and they won't reveal that information and give up that power to someone just because they're HOH. Some people get it. Sarah Beth, who has thrown a few names under the bus during big meetings before, and it got her on the block a couple of weeks ago. She doesn't quite understand what Derek X obviously realizes, that you aren't gained by throwing your allies under the bus to someone who's already targeting you. We've got Sarah Beth also figuring that Derek X, the people he's trying to protect are probably Tiffany and Claire and Hannah. Well, yeah, that's who he's tightest with and who he's working with. So he's not gonna try to throw them under the bus just because he's being asked to. And then finally, she's trying to figure out, or she and Kylan are trying to figure out who can play in next week's high roller competition. And because really, Derek X has enough money to play, and I think they all suspect / know that Derek X could play if he's still in the house. Big D now has enough money to play as well, and they're thinking. Apparently, Hannah told them or told someone in the house that she played in the roulette competition in the past week, and therefore she doesn't have enough money to play the week following. That's not true. Hannah did not play. Hannah, if Derek X goes home, the only two people who likely are going to be able to play in the coup d'etat, the week 3 high roller competition, is going to be Big D and Hannah. Those are the two. So it's going one of those two probably is going to be able to take over the HOH for the upcoming week. Either one of them, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens. For either one of them taking over, that's not good for Sarah Beth, I don't think at all. But we'll see what happens. So there you have it, guys. Again, not a lot of deep conversations, a little posturing before the veto ceremony today, but everything's pretty much been decided. Once a veto occurs, we'll have stronger campaigning from Derek X. It isn't going to matter. Unfortunately, this week may be a little slow. People are going to start positioning themselves for the next HOH, but I expect a few slow days coming up. But that's all right. We're still going to talk about it. Guys, y'all have a fantastic Monday. Enjoy the start of another work week. I will be back tomorrow morning, give you all a scoop on whatever conversations take place. And yeah, it'll be a little slow, but we'll still have some conversations that are worth talking about. Have a fantastic Monday, guys. Cheers, my friends. SKD 143. Bye.